In the unforgiving world of combat sports, where every punch, kick, or takedown can shift the course of a career, confidence is not only a virtue, it's a necessity. Fighters need it to walk into the cage or ring with composure, to execute their strategies under pressure, and to stand tall amid the roar of a hostile crowd. But there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, and history has shown that those who cross it often pay a severe price. Arrogance in combat sports is more than just a personality flaw, it's a liability. While some combatants use showmanship and bravado to psych out their opponents, others fall into the trap of believing their own hype, underestimating their rivals, and putting more energy into appearances than performance. These are the fighters who learn the hard way that combat sports punish delusion mercilessly. There's something uniquely poetic about watching an arrogant fighter crumble in the face of superior skill. It's a visual metaphor for justice, for the natural rebalancing of egos. Whether in boxing, MMA, or kickboxing, the story often unfolds the same way. A cocky, disrespectful athlete brags about their invincibility, mocks their opponent, and puts on a spectacle leading up to the fight. But once the bell rings, reality sets in. The same theatrics that once captivated audiences turn into desperate gestures, the swagger gives way to panic, and the smile disappears beneath a bloodied face. That's the moment fans live for, not out of cruelty, but because it affirms the timeless truth that talk is cheap, and only results matter. Understanding why arrogance is so common in combat sports requires a look into the psychology of fighters. Combat, unlike any other sport, is a deeply personal confrontation. It's one-on-one, often violent, and rooted in centuries-old traditions of honor and dominance. To enter that space without fear, some fighters adopt personas, masks of bravado that help them cope with the pressure. These personas can be genuine or entirely manufactured. Fighters like Muhammad Ali elevated this to an art form, blending trash talk with charisma and backing up every word with elite talent. But not everyone is Ali. Many confuse arrogance with confidence, believing that acting invincible can compensate for weaknesses in technique, preparation, or mental fortitude. This dangerous mindset often leads to disastrous consequences. The ring or cage becomes a place of reckoning, a truth serum where every boast is tested and every insult avenged. Unlike other sports, where teams and systems can mask individual flaws, combat sports strip the athlete bare. There is no one to pass the ball to, no clock to run out. It's a test of will, skill, and discipline, and arrogance has no place in that equation. Time and time again, we've seen fighters fall because they believed their own hype, underestimated their opponent, or let emotion cloud their judgment. Take the case of Strako Tarnajev, a name that once sent a chill through the heavyweight division. A physically imposing man covered in tattoos, Tarnajev built his reputation on intimidation rather than results. He strutted into weigh-ins like a movie villain, bullying opponents with menacing glares, flexing his muscles, and engaging in theatrical antics designed to unnerve. One of his most infamous moments came during the pre-fight face-off with Igor Gasper, where Tarnajev grabbed Gasper's throat in a blatant show of disrespect. The message was clear. Tsarnaev wanted everyone to believe he was a monster. But when the fight started, reality struck with cruel efficiency. Gasper wasn't intimidated. In fact, he remained composed, relying on footwork and timing to dismantle the arrogant giant. Tarnajev's raw aggression quickly turned into wild flailing as Gasper picked him apart with precision. Within minutes, the supposed menace was reduced to a stumbling wreck. One well-placed counter sent Tsarnaev crashing to the canvas, his ego deflated along with his chances. The crowd erupted, not just for the victory, but for the justice served. Tarnajev had committed the cardinal sin of believing that fear could replace skill, and the ring made him pay for it. Then there's Bob Sapp, a figure both celebrated and ridiculed in equal measure. Towering, muscular, and loud, Sapp's early career was marked by quick victories over undersized opponents. His fights often looked like mismatches, with Sapp overwhelming his rivals through sheer physicality rather than refined technique. He leaned into the spectacle, releasing comical videos mocking future opponents, making outrageous predictions, and portraying himself as an unstoppable force. But the illusion couldn't last forever. When he stepped into the cage with Mario Pianovski, a 5-time world's strongest man, the stage was set for a reckoning. Pianovski, though relatively new to MMA, was no stranger to discipline and power. Unlike Sapp's previous opponents, he didn't flinch at the theatrics. Leading up to the fight, Sapp released yet another mocking video, suggesting that he would make Pianovski beg for mercy. But once inside the cage, it became clear that Sapp had finally met someone who couldn't be bullied. Pianovski used his superior conditioning and striking to dominate the fight, taking Sapp down and delivering a ground-and-pound clinic. Sapp, who had ridiculed his opponent only days before, was left turtled up, absorbing unanswered blows until the referee stepped in. It was a public dismantling, a reminder that muscles and mockery mean little against preparation and heart. Boour Abdullah presents another cautionary tale. Riding high on a 7-fight win streak, Abdullah was known more for his dirty tactics than technical brilliance. He frequently pushed the boundaries of legality, using eye pokes, fence grabs, and even low blows to gain an advantage. His arrogance was unmatched. He walked into fights as if he were above the sport itself, dismissing opponents and referees alike. But every villain eventually meets their executioner, and for Abdullah, that came in the form of Mascot Dvalishvili. Calm, disciplined, and ruthlessly effective, Dvalishvili represented everything Abdullah wasn't. From the opening bell, Dvalishvili established control. He targeted Abdullah's legs with surgical kicks, disrupting his base and nullifying any attempts at offense. The crowd watched as Abdullah, usually the one inflicting damage, limped around the cage, desperate and outmatched. Dvalishvili's strikes weren't just meant to hurt, they were statements. Each kick and punch echoed with the message that respect matters and that the sport remembers those who tarnish its integrity. By the time the referee stopped the fight, Abdullah was a broken man, physically and symbolically. His arrogance had been dragged into the spotlight and dissected for all to see. One of the most infamous examples of arrogance meeting its end comes from boxing's colorful villain, Ricardo Mayorga. A natural trash talker, Mayorga thrived on mind games. He smoked during training, made crude jokes at press conferences, and disrespected opponents in ways that crossed the line. Ahead of his bout with Shane Mosley, Mayorga stooped lower than ever, targeting Mosley's girlfriend with lewd remarks and gestures. It was one of the ugliest build-ups in boxing history, and fans clamored for Mosley to shut him up. When the fight began, that's exactly what he did. Mosley, known for his respectful demeanor and technical sharpness, turned into a quiet executioner. He patiently broke Mayorga down round by round, landing clean shots and exposing the gaps in Mayorga's defense. Mayorga, who had danced and taunted in previous fights, began to wilt under the pressure. In the 6th round, Mosley landed a picture-perfect right hand that sent Mayorga sprawling. The arena erupted, not just for the knockout, but for the justice of it all. The fight had become more than just a contest of skill. It was a battle of values, and Mosley had emerged as the victor in both arenas. Julian Wallace, also known as Jules the Jackal, provides another example of how quickly arrogance can unravel. Covered in tattoos and constantly snarling at cameras, Wallace cultivated the image of a dangerous man. He barked at opponents during weigh-ins, puffed out his chest, and used every opportunity to portray himself as a feared enforcer. When he faced Beneil Dariush, he carried the same energy, staring him down during the pre-fight photos with exaggerated intensity. But Dariush wasn't impressed. A composed, high-level technician, he saw through the facade immediately. When the fight started, Wallace tried to charge in with aggression, but Dariush dismantled him with surgical ease. The difference in class was immediately apparent. Dariush's combinations landed cleanly, His counters were sharp, and within minutes, Wallace was unconscious on the canvas. The knockout was brutal, almost cinematic in its finality. The audience didn't just witness a defeat, they witnessed a revelation. The scary tattoos, the glares, the tough guy persona, it all meant nothing against a real fighter with real skill. Even legends have learned the consequences of arrogance, as seen in the clashes between Mike Tyson and Frank Bruno. Though Tyson was widely feared in his prime, Bruno attempted to exploit Tyson's personal troubles ahead of their 1989 fight. He mocked Tyson's failed marriage and unstable personal life, believing he could rattle the champion. But Tyson didn't engage in verbal sparring. He let his hands do the talking. When they met in the ring, Tyson unleashed a barrage of punches that overwhelmed Bruno, knocking him down with a vicious uppercut in the 5th round. The lesson hadn't been learned, because when the two met again in 1996, Bruno repeated his mistake, and Tyson repeated his punishment. For all the talk, the only voice that mattered was Tyson's fists. Combat sports, at their core, are about honor and merit. The ring doesn't care about social media followers, pre-fight antics, or exaggerated reputations. It rewards preparation, humility, and execution. The tales of Tarnajev, Sapp, Abdullah, Mayorga, Wallace, and even Bruno are not just stories of defeat. They are reminders that arrogance is a dangerous game in a sport governed by reality. These humbling moments are not anomalies. They are inevitable outcomes for those who forget that respect must be earned through action, not attitude, and in the end, fans remember these moments not just because of the violence or the drama, but because of what they represent. They are modern-day fables where false kings are dethroned, bullies are punished, and justice is delivered in punches, kicks, and takedowns. Every time a fighter steps into the arena with more swagger than substance, they risk becoming the next chapter in this ever-growing volume of combat karma. And that's what makes the sport so brutally honest. No matter how loud you are, no matter how many headlines you grab, once the cage door closes, only one truth remains. Skill, discipline, and heart always triumph over arrogance.